A really fantastic tool for optimizing your queries are SQL Server's query execution plans. Now, SQL Server will show you very plainly the execution plan that it uses or it has used to execute a query for you. And you can always see two versions of the execution plan, and that is an estimated plan or an actual plan. Now, let's talk about the differences. An estimated execution plan is where SQL looks at your query. It goes through that whole process of determining the various ways that it could execute this. It does its cost analysis, and it chooses an execution plan and shows that to you. But the query is not actually executed. Now, the reason for doing this is, what if you've got a query that has maybe 600,000 or 700,000 rows that are being returned or that has to be looked at to satisfy that? Well, that could put a pretty significant load on your SQL Server, and you're trying to optimize. So do you want to run this query, 7 or 8 times just to try to figure out the best way to structure the query or to assign indexes or to create indexes on the various tables and so forth? No, you don't want to do that. So this will give you an estimated plan without actually executing the query on your SQL Server. The actual plan is just what it sounds like. It is the actual plan that was used and the query is executed. Now, this can give you, in some cases, a little more realistic feedback, but again, you'll have to balance out the cost against the time on your server and the load there. Now, an execution plan can be looked at in 3 different forms. We can do a text version of an execution plan, an XML version, or a graphical version. Now, by far the most popular is graphical. XML is kind of cool because we can put it in a standard format. And then, watch this note, text representations of plans are deprecated, and Microsoft's already telling us they're going to be removed in future versions. So, you probably want to go ahead and get used to using either graphical or XML, and I can pretty much almost guarantee you the graphical is what you're going to like. Now, if you want to see an XML-based query execution plan, and I'll demo this in part 2. By the way, this is part 1. There's no way we'll get all this covered in one video. To see an XML-based query execution plan, use the set show plan _XML, and this will create an XML document that has all the information for the estimated plan that SQL Server chose. For the actual execution plan, you'll use the set statistics space, not an underscore. I like that consistency there. That's just there to help confuse you just a little bit. Set statistics space XML for actual plans. Now, this set statement, you set it on, you set show plan XML on. Before you run the query, it'll generate the XML plan. Then you have to set it back off. So it's like a flip switch. You're going to flip it on, then you've got to set show plan XML off to turn it back off. Same thing for set statistics XML. We'll look at that. We'll look at some examples in part 2. Now, I'm going to show you a graphical execution plan in part 2, but let me go ahead and tell you, because when you see it, you're going to see icons, and you're like, well, wait a minute. What exactly does it mean, and how many icons can show up here? If you go to SQL Books Online and search for Show Plan, Logical, and Physical Operators Reference, you will see a list of every icon that could be used out there in a graphical execution plan, and a very simple description about what that's telling you when you see it. Now, these query execution plans are kind of interesting, and you'll get used to reading them over time. They look kind of hieroglyphics-like when you first see them. They're very logical, but you'll just kind of have to dig into the underpinnings of SQL Server to understand when a certain kind of a join, a hash, and so forth is better than others, for the indexes, table scans, and all that sort of thing. But for the purposes of this exam, you just need to know what tools are out there, what you can do with these tools, and how to know what the tools are telling you. So if you'll join me in part 2, we'll go out into the Management Studio and look at generating some XML execution plans and take a look at a graphical execution plan as well. So join me there.